Hi, my name is Andrew Georgitsis, and we are continuing now on with our UTD under the hood. And so far, we've kind of covered a lot about the background of myself, Andrew Georgitsis, and of course, Jeff. You've seen some videos about Jeff and got to meet the co-founder of UTD, as well as a lot about just UTD's background. What is our background? What are our roots? Where do we come from? What's our mission? What's our purpose? Right, we've talked about that. Talked a little bit about our ethos and our 10 covenants. And even the last chapter you saw was about our teaching philosophy. So today I want to talk about our equipment philosophy. And I know everybody's like, oh yeah, I've been waiting for this one. Cool. And again, if you want to read a little bit about our equipment philosophy, you can always go to our website, and under the tab about us, right there it says equipment philosophy. You can click it and you get this page. Now, I'm not going to read from this page for you today. You can read it for yourself. What I want to do is have a little with us, you and I, just a little chat about our equipment philosophy. And where this really comes from is, let's just go with our background. So our background, as some of you already know, is from the cave diving community. And the cave diving community was pretty fractured and splintered, and this is back in the 80s and 90s, and a lot of different configurations and ideologies, and but the central theme has always been to carry enough backup, right? But sometimes less is more. So for example, one very famous explorer, I mentioned him earlier, he used to believe in having 16 lights. Well, after you analyze and blah, 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 in the book and so forth, we come down to 3. 3 seems to be sufficient, because carrying more means you've got to carry more gear. If you're going to carry the whole kitchen sink, well, it becomes a point that you can't dive anymore. So this minimalistic approach started to sort of creep in. With that came the configuration, as most of you might know it, of Hogarthian. Now, that's not a philosophy, not a diving philosophy, not a mindset. It's just a straight configuration. And that was a set of doubles on your back. And instead of taking that long hose and having it stuffed in some bungees back there, or stuffed on your side or in some bungees, are you catching what I'm saying? Side mount divers, right? What we did in this Hogarthian configuration is we just wrapped it around our neck. And of course, everybody threw the toys out the cot and said, what? I don't know, dude, that's the long hose, that's the backup, that's the one you pass to the buddy, that's the worst breathing regulator, and that's the, that's the hose that's going to have the most CO2 and you can't breathe from it. And that really struck me, and I went, it's so funny in this industry that people will dive the best regulator that they can and have the worst regulator, the biggest POS, maybe it's a stupid Air 2 thing, I don't know, or it's the cheapest thing they can find, or some regulator they've dug out of a pile of somewhere. Maybe their dad gave it to them as their bailout, as their backup, as their decompression regulator. And you sit there and you go, man, have you guys got this, excuse the French, ass backwards. That's an American expression, by the way. Ass backwards means the wrong way around. You should be diving the worst regulator during the dive, because that's the shortest part of the dive. And when that regulator fails, and if it fails, now you have the best regulator, the best breathing regulator for the emergency, lowest CO2, for the big 3 hours of decompression, should be the best regulator, not the worst. I once had a student come in and tell me he's going to use his old dad's Daycor Pacer for his oxygen decompression regulator. And I laughed at him. I said, you're going to be spending 2 hours in oxygen decompression on the worst regulator, but you got the most expensive high-performance regulator for your bottom, which is going to be 20 minutes. So you're going to spend 3 miserable hours decompressing on a miserable regulator and 20 minutes on your best regulator. Think the other way around. And that's how you have to think of your equipment philosophy. Start with the end goal in mind. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. What's the end goal in mind? When the foot hits the shan, you know what I mean by that. All right? Reverse those words around. When the foot hits the shan, you want the best performing regulator. You want the best least CO2, least narcosis, the best gas to breathe, the best protocol, the best buddy. That's when you want all these tools that you train and work for. That's when you want the equipment that's the best. You know, and I get into so many arguments with people because they will always tell me, yeah, we know on our rebreathers, you know, especially this is a rebreather argument, we know on the rebreathers, electronics fail. So I teach my students to dive a rebreather manually. And I'm like, okay, why? Well, manual's the safest, and it's the bailout, and it's the, you know, they all need to know how to fly their rebreather manually. And I go, that's why we dive our rebreather manually. Because it is the safest and the best. And the, you know, that is the right way to dive it. You don't let the electronics kick the gas in and make you lazy and inefficient. And to the point where you never even really monitor it. And that's when the accidents happen. You know, again, when you dive the rebreather manually, right, you're always diving it in safest mode. Right? Nothing to fail, nothing to inject gas when you don't want that gas. No ADV, no all these fancy terms. It's you in control of your rebreather, 100%. No no injection of oxygen, no self-bleeding oxygen, no bailout parachute. Because again, bailout parachute is nonsense. That argument is nonsense. I had a guy tell me that when he dives his rebreather, he has one of these special first stages that basically has got a fixed IP, intermediate pressure, and it bleeds a consistent amount of oxygen into his rebreather. So he dives that up until a certain point that fixed IP doesn't work anymore. It doesn't matter the depth, but in this case it was 280 feet, 90 meters or whatever it is, right? So then he said, 80 meters, 9 bar. So then he said, and then at that point, I switch over and I don't have any bleed anymore. So I just turn that tank off and I dive my rebreather manually when I'm deep. And I was like, oh man. It's so unbelievable that he actually believes that this parachute, this bleeding of O2, is safer for him up until 280 feet, and then he turns it off because it's worthless after that. So then he dives and accepts the risk after that. And then on the way back, he has to remember to turn it on, but then blah, 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 blah. He doesn't dive it that way anymore because he's no longer with us for that reason. Point is it makes me laugh because you are not understanding the core, where you're putting band-aids, whether it be equipment band-aids especially, over the top of these problems. And so much gear is invented because you've got a perceived problem, so you can put this band-aid over the top, right? I can't manually inject, I don't know, whatever, so I'm going to have an automatic injection, all right? And again, I want to get away from the rebreathers, but you get my point. So, circling back, when we looked at this whole thing, this Hogarthian configuration, right? It was this idea of, no, you dive the bailout. This air share that you're going to do is the regulator that person's going to get. Why? Because it's the gas that you know is breathable. It's a regulator that you know that works, okay? And it's on a hose that you can support single file exit through a restriction. Hence, you dive it. You don't stuff it in a bungee. You don't put it behind your tanks. You wrap it around your neck and you dim. And then you have your necklace in a place that you can reach it. And that necklace has to be of the same quality. You see, this was the mindset. And we've taken that philosophy into our world, UTD world. And we've said, let's think about this because, yes, if you think about the DIR configuration, you kind of boxed yourself, didn't you? You said, okay, look, if I'm DIR, there's 2 tanks on the back and a pony bottle and, a stage bottle, deco bottle, stage bottle, whatever. But there's so many other exploration things that you have to expand out. One of them, of course, is rebreathers. Another, of course, is side mount. Another, of course, is the kids system. Something for kids. Another is recreational, right? So these are all things and different areas that this set of 104 or 18 liter steel tanks on your back with a huge argon, stage bottle and decal bottles, sure, it worked in the cave, in that environment, in that era. But we have to now expand as our desire for different tools. One of them was moving into rebreathers. First PSCR and then MCCR and fully closed systems. So UTD, we took this philosophy and we moved our equipment philosophy into those areas by saying, look, anything that's unnecessary, anything that's, the perceived parachute, anything that's the perceived Band-Aid, we're going to get rid of. No electronics, no ADV. Why do you need an ADV? Because you're too lazy to push the button? Oh, but what happens if your arms are occupied and you can't push the button? Well, then you can't descend. You can't do it because, again, how do you clear your ears? How do you inflate your BC? How do you inflate your dry suit if your arms are too occupied? So the ADV is an unnecessary risk and failure point. ADV means an auto-diluent valve. Or, the oxygen bleed. And I can go on and on and on. So we got rid of all the noise, all the nonsense. Because all of that nonsense creates then special protocols. So for example, let's talk about the oxygen bleed. Okay, here this thing is bleeding oxygen into your system at a constant rate. So it's kind of like cruise control on your car. You're doing 55 miles out on the road. But what happens if the road says 35? Well, then you've got to brake. So on this particular ADV, you've got to be able to brake the ADV. You've got to be able to slow it down or speed it up or slow it down or speed it up. But what you find out is that it's very rarely 55. In fact, the highways are 65, the back roads are 25. This is a stoplight. What happens if you're a stoplight? So if you come to the stoplight with your oxygen bleed, you've got to be able to turn it off. Then you have to have a protocol to turn it back on, and you have to make sure your teammates turn it back on. Whereas in fact, what you find that most vehicles have a gas pedal, a manual gas pedal, for a reason. Because the environment is changing constantly, and you have to be aware enough to use that gas pedal and brake combination to be able to accelerate and decelerate. And through a little bit of practice and a little bit of work, it becomes second nature. None of you, when you're driving your car, think about braking and accelerating. It's done naturally. Watching that speed limit, looking up, your neighbors, whatever's going on, you're braking and accelerating. Guess what's happening when you rebreather diving? When you practice manual enough, and eliminate all the noise, you become so in tune with it that when you get a little bit of buoyancy change, you have to adjust loop volume. And so it becomes braking and accelerating. Oxygen and diluent addition almost automatically. Because you eliminated all the other noise. All the other Band-Aids and crap. That was the UTD philosophy. Same when we went to side mount. Exactly the same idea. We said, man, the whole side mount path, everybody's going down this road of this equipment philosophy, and it's independent doubles. And you're like, dude, in the mid-90s, all right, there was a very, very famous TDI person named Rob Palmer who used to really push independent doubles till he died because of his independent doubles. I've seen so many people have accidents because of independent doubles, because they're doing this regulated switch. In fact, I was involved in pulling out somebody in Italy, a woman who died, not in my class, different agency's class, but not the point. Had to pull her out because she died doing independent doubles because she switched and it was not familiar and it was current, and she was not able to clear that regulator. Right, and she ended up choking and dying in front of her husband because of independent doubles. So independent doubles for us forever has been an absolute no-no in the DIR community. So why, when I go side mount diving, would I just all of a sudden say, well, I'm going to abandon it and just do, independent doubles? No. Absolutely not. I'm going to take the piece of equipment that we use on our rebreathers called a distribution block, and I'm going to do exactly the same on the back of my my neck, and I'm going to have it exactly the same as a valve that you find on a set of doubles, so it's consistent. And I'm going to have the exact same protocols, and all of a sudden I can now be on my long hose 100% of the time, not 50% of the time. I don't have to do this switching thing. I'm on my long hose 100% of the time. So my equipment philosophy follows my protocol, follows my teaching. They are one. And if I'm on side mount or if I'm back mount, I'm always breathing the long O's. I'm always donating the long O's, always 100%. So I'm even consistent in my configurations. And that is our philosophy. So as we branched out into different configurations or tools, because side mount is not good for everything, back mount is not good for everything, rebreathe is not good for everything, Scuba is not good for everything. They're all different tools that you use in different environments and different times. And those tools must have the same philosophy, must be consistent. Because when the fit hits the fan, when you need them, you don't need to be searching around for an LP inflator that's across your chest. And when you say, why is it across your chest? Because that's what side mounters do. Don't have any reason why they do it. We put our inflator in the same place as our back mount, as our rebreather, as everything. So we're always consistent. You always know where your buoyancy control is. You know, dry suit, buoyancy control, BC. Always, yeah. We don't cross it across our chest for no reason just because, well, that's, you know, what side mounters do. So this all becomes part of our equipment philosophy, is that we bleed in our ethos, consistency, scalability, interchangeability. If you looked at those earlier videos talking about a light, you don't need a special side mount light. One light works for all configurations. I mean, think about it logically. I know it makes me laugh every time I think about a side mount light. To me, it just sounds like a sales pitch to sell you another light. You know, it's got to have a 90-degree noise. The light still goes here on the right in side mount configuration. The long O still goes underneath the light canister. It's consistent to your back mount. You don't have to think about it. It's route learning. If you see our teaching philosophy, you see it's route learned with understanding, application, and correlation. You don't have to change your way of thinking because you now want to do side mount, or you want to do rebreather, or you want to do back mount, or you want to do single tank, or you want your son to go, you know, Zubering around with you and have a lot of fun in 20 feet of water. That's what Zuber means. You can look at configuration. The point is, it's all consistent. Anyways, if you have any questions about our philosophy, about, you know, UTD, anything like that, feel free to email us at info@unifiedteamdiving.com. And as always, safe diving.